There's an animal living in the rainforest right now that weighs exactly the same as one grape. One single grape. She is shorter than your thumb.
And she builds her own house out of a living leaf, using nothing but her teeth.
And when the sun comes down through that leaf, the roof she made turns her almost invisible. Welcome back to the Fenekie Explorer Club, where every animal is a superhero in disguise.
Calling all Fenekins!
This week, we're heading to the lowland rainforests of Central America, and we've found something extraordinary.
She is one of the tiniest mammals in that whole forest, and she cuts a leaf into a tent and then hides inside the color of it.
Let's go. So picture a rainforest in Central America. Honduras, eastern Nicaragua, Costa Rica, the western edge of Panama. Lowland forest from right down at sea level up to about 1,000 meters. That's about 3,300 feet. So think of a tall mountain road and everything below that.
Hot, wet, green.
Extremely. And here's the thing people get wrong about rainforests. When we picture one, we picture the top, the canopy. Monkeys in the branches, birds in the sunlight, that whole postcard.
The travel poster version.
Right. But the animal we're talking about today doesn't live up there at all. She lives in the basement, the understory. That's the layer of low leafy plants growing underneath the big trees, roughly from the ground up to about waist height. Broad leaves, wet dark soil, very little direct sun. Almost everything that reaches down there has already passed through layer after layer of leaves above it.
So the light itself has changed by the time it gets there.
The light arrives green. And hold on to that because it turns out to be the whole story.
Okay. Who is she?
She's called the Honduran white bat. And she is a bat that most people, when they see a photo, assume is fake.
Why fake?
Because bats are supposed to be brown or black or gray, and she is snow white. Pure white fur, dense and soft. Not albino, by the way, which is what everyone asks. Albino animals have red or pink eyes because they've got no pigment at all. She's got dark eyes. Her white is a real, made-on-purpose white.
And that's already unusual for a bat.
Very. But the white isn't even the strange part. The strange part is her face.
Go on.
Her ears are bright yellow-orange. Not pale, not pinkish, properly yellow-orange, like the skin of a ripe mango. Her lips are that same color. The skin around her eyes is that color. And on the bridge of her nose, she has this small, pointed flap of skin standing up, shaped a bit like a tiny spear. And that is bright yellow-orange too.
What is that thing on her nose?
It's called a nose leaf. And a lot of bats have some version of it. It's a sensing structure that helps her work with sound. Hers is about 5 to 8 millimeters tall, which is roughly the length of a grain of rice.
On a face that small.
On a face that small. And then her wings are jet black. So the whole animal is snow white fur, glowing yellow-orange face, black wings. There is honestly nothing else that looks like her.
All right, tell me how big she actually is, because shorter than your thumb is doing a lot of work in my head right now.
Head and body, 37 to 47 millimeters. That's 1.5 to nearly 2 inches. Hold your thumb up. She is shorter than that.
That's absurd.
And her weight is 5 to 6 grams. That is about 1/5 of an ounce. A single grape weighs 5 to 7 grams. So if you put one grape on one side of a set of scales and her on the other, they would just about balance.
I want that image on a poster. A grape and a bat. Level.
Her wings open wider than you'd expect, mind you. 9.5 to 10.5 centimeters tip to tip, which is 3.7 to 4.1 inches. Spread your thumb and finger as far apart as they go. That's her whole wingspan.
A tiny body with proper wings on it.
She's the smallest fruit-eating bat in Central America, and she is not fragile. She's a builder.
Which is where we're going next, I assume.
That is exactly where we're going. Okay. Her superpower is called Leaf Shield. And I want to build it properly because it's actually 2 powers stacked on top of each other, and most people only ever hear about the first one.
Start with the first one.
The first one is that she makes her own house. not finds, makes. Now, plenty of animals build. Birds build nests, beavers build dams. What makes her different is that she doesn't gather anything, and she doesn't carry anything. She takes one leaf that is still alive and still attached to its plant, and she remodels it.
Remodels a leaf.
There's a plant that grows all through that understory called heliconia. You may have seen one in a garden center, big paddle-shaped leaves, sometimes those bright red flowers that look like lobster claws.
Oh, I know those. The leaves are enormous.
They can reach a full meter long, 3 and a bit feet, longer than your arm. And here's the structure that matters. Running straight down the middle of that leaf is a thick central rib, the midrib. It's the spine. And branching out sideways from that spine on both sides are dozens of smaller veins. Those side veins are what hold the leaf out flat and stiff, like the ribs of an umbrella.
So the spine down the middle and the little ribs going out.
Exactly that. Now, she lands on this leaf, 5 grams of bat on a leaf that could be 20 times longer than she is, and she starts biting.
Biting where?
This is the crucial bit, and it's the bit everybody gets backwards. She does not bite the spine. She bites the little side veins, one at a time. She works along the left side, then the right, cutting through those side ribs where they branch off the middle.
What happens if she cut the middle one?
The whole leaf would fall off, that's the point. The spine has to survive. She's not destroying the leaf, she's disarming it.
Disarming it.
Because once those side ribs are cut, there's nothing left holding the leaf out flat. And gravity does the rest. Both halves of the leaf sag downward from that intact middle spine, slowly, evenly. And what you end up with is a shape exactly like a tent, upside down V. The spine is the ridgepole along the top, and the 2 drooping halves are the walls.
She turns an umbrella into a tent.
That is precisely what she does, and underneath, there's about 10 to 20 centimeters of headroom, 4 to 8 inches. Open at both ends so she can fly straight in and straight out.
How long does this take her?
Weeks. It is genuinely weeks of work. She comes back to the same leaf morning after morning, cutting a few more veins each time. This is not one clever bite. This is a construction project.
And is it just the mothers doing this? I always assume it's the mothers doing everything.
Both, actually. Males and females have both been watched building. Everybody cuts.
Good.
And here's a detail I love. She picks her leaf at a specific height, roughly 0.5 meter to 2 meters off the ground. That's about knee height up to a bit above your head. Low enough that she can work it, high enough to be out of the way.
She's choosing the plot before she builds the house.
She's choosing the plot. Now, second power.
The one nobody talks about.
The one nobody talks about. Once that tent is finished, she hangs upside down underneath it and goes to sleep for the day. And when morning sun hits the top of that leaf, the light comes through it. But leaves are green, and a green leaf only lets green light through. Everything else gets stopped.
So underneath, it's a green room.
Everything under there is bathed in green light, and this is where it gets genuinely beautiful. Her snow-white fur, out in ordinary daylight, would be the brightest thing in that whole forest. She'd be a light bulb.
You'd spot her instantly.
Under the green, she stops being white. The green light lands on that white fur, and the whiteness just goes. And her bright yellow-orange face, which normally shouts, gets muted right down. She turns the color of the underside of a leaf.
So she disappears into her own roof.
She disappears into her own roof. If you were a monkey moving through those branches above her, or a snake resting further along, you'd look down at that heliconia, L-H-E-L-O-C-O-N-I-A, plant, and you would see a leaf. That's it, just a leaf, sitting there in the green, doing nothing.
That's why the tent exists.
That's exactly why the tent exists. It isn't just shelter from rain, though it does that too, because those leaves are waxy and water rolls right off. The tent's real job is to make her not there.
Okay, so let me get this straight. She builds the shelter, and the shelter also changes what color she is?
And here's the part that made me sit back when I read it. Her colors and her tent living evolved together. She is not a white bat that happened to find a green leaf. She is a bat whose coloring only makes sense underneath a green leaf. The house and the animal are tuned to each other.
That's leaf shield.
That is leaf shield. She builds her own camouflage out of a living plant, and then she lives inside the color it makes.
So, what does a day look like for her, or I suppose a night?
A night, she's strictly nocturnal. All day she hangs under that leaf, upside down, completely still, in the green. And she is not alone. 1 to 6 of them share a single tent.
In a space the size of 2 hands?
Bigger than that. Remember, the leaf is longer than your arm, and they gather along the ridge of it, usually 1 adult male and several females. They hang in the middle of the leaf, pressed right up against each other, touching.
Why touching? It's a rainforest. It's warm.
It's warm in the day. It cools off at night and in the small hours, and she weighs 5 grams. There's almost nothing of her to hold heat. 5 small bodies pressed together lose heat much more slowly than one on its own. That huddle is a survival tool. It genuinely improves their odds.
So the pile is the point.
The pile is the point. Then at dusk, she drops out from under the leaf, opens those black wings, and goes.
Now I have to ask the bat question. Echolocation?
Of course she echolocates. She's a bat. She makes those high clicks as she flies and reads the echoes coming back off branches and trunks. It's too high-pitched for us to hear it all. But honestly, that's the ordinary part of her. Every bat does that. Her remarkable trick is the house.
Fair. So where's she flying to?
A fig tree. And I want to be precise here because this is the fact that ends up mattering most in this whole episode.
Go on.
She doesn't eat lots of fruits. She eats figs. Scientists have gone through what she's actually been eating, and the overwhelming majority of it is one particular kind of fig tree. There's the occasional other fig when that one isn't fruiting, but essentially, her diet is that tree.
So 1 plant for sleeping and 1 plant for eating.
Her entire life fits inside 2 plants. That's not me being poetic, that's the biology. 1 kind of leaf to sleep under, 1 kind of tree to eat from.
What are figs like for her?
Perfect, actually. Figs are packed with energy, they're soft enough for a tiny animal to get into, and fig trees fruit at all sorts of times through the year rather than one short season. So she flies out, finds a tree that's carrying fruit, and she'll often stay at that one tree for hours working through it.
How does she find it in the dark?
Smell, mostly. A ripe fig tree in a warm forest is a very loud smell if you're built to notice it. And memory, she learns her trees.
And then home before light.
Home before light, back under the leaf, hooked on with her feet, upside down, and she stays motionless all day in the green.
You said the tents get rebuilt. How often?
This one surprised me. A heliconia leaf, heliconia, that nobody has touched, lives about 61 weeks. Call it a year and 2 months.
Okay.
A leaf she's cut lives about 7.5 weeks.
Oh, so the building shortens the leaf's life.
The cutting starts a clock. About 2 months and that leaf is finished, and she doesn't patch it up or move back in later. She goes and finds a fresh one and starts again.
So she's building houses over and over her whole life.
All year round, constantly, she is never really done.
What about babies?
1 at a time, never twins. And the pregnancy runs about 11 months.
11 months for a 5-gram animal?
Nearly a full year for an animal that will weigh 5 grams when it arrives. And then that pup hangs in the tent with its mother for 3 to 4 months.
Doing what?
Learning the map. Where the fig trees are, which way the flight paths run between the trunks, how the forest works at night. She doesn't hand that over in a week. It takes months, hanging next to her mother in the green light and then going out with her.
That's a long apprenticeship for something that small.
It's a whole childhood.
So what is she doing for the forest? Because I always want to know what the animal gives back.
2 things. And the second one is going to surprise you. First one, she plants trees.
The figs.
The figs. She eats fruit. The seeds are tiny, they go through her, and she's flying, so she drops them somewhere else in the forest, far from the tree she ate at. Fig seeds land in places the parent tree could never have reached.
She's a delivery service that doesn't know it's a delivery service.
She has no idea. She's just hungry. But over years and years, that scattering is part of how the forest fills back in. A 5-gram animal is quietly planting fig trees across a rainforest.
And the surprising one?
Her yellow face might help human eyes.
I'm gonna need a lot more than that.
Fair. So, that yellow-orange color on her ears and lips and nose comes from a pigment called a carotenoid. Carotenoid is just the family of orange and yellow colorings that plants make. It's what makes a carrot orange and a flamingo pink.
And she gets it from the figs.
She gets it from the figs. She eats them, and one particular carotenoid from that fruit, called lutein, ends up in her skin in high enough amounts to actually show as color.
Is that not just how it works for everyone?
Not for mammals, no. Birds do it constantly, that's a canary. Fish do it, reptiles do it. Mammals do not. When researchers published this in 2016, she was the first mammal anyone had ever documented putting enough carotenoid into bare skin to make a visible color.
The first one ever.
The first one on record.
And the eyes?
So lutein, that same yellow pigment, matters in the human eye. It gathers in the very center of the back of your eye, the part you use for sharp detail, and it acts a bit like a built-in filter against harsh light. Low lutein there is linked to a condition that steals central vision in older adults.
And she is very good at handling lutein.
She is extraordinarily good at it. She takes it out of her food and packs it into her skin at levels no other mammal manages. So researchers are studying how she does it to see whether it points at ways of helping people take up more lutein.
I want to be careful here. Nobody's saying she cures anything.
Nobody is saying that, and I'd hate for anyone to hear it that way. This is a research direction, not a treatment. But think about the shape of it. A bat the weight of a grape, in a forest most people will never walk through, doing something with a yellow pigment that no other mammal does, and that might one day help people keep their sight.
And her yellow face is only there because of the leaf.
Because of the leaf, the color makes sense under the green roof. So the things scientists are studying exist because she builds tents. It's all one animal.
Okay, so how is she doing?
I want to tell this one carefully because it's not a disaster story and I don't want to make it into one.
Tell it properly then.
Officially, she's listed as near threatened, and here's the shape of that. Back in 1996, she was listed as being of least concern, nothing to worry about. By the year 2000, she'd slipped to near threatened. That's a real drop, and it happened fast.
And since then?
Since then, she has stayed exactly there, 25 years at near threatened. She hasn't got worse.
So it's a slide that stopped.
That's the honest way to say it, a slide that stopped. Not a recovery, but not a collapse either. She's holding.
What made her slide in the first place?
Think back to the two plants. Her whole life fits inside them, and both of them grow in the same layer of the forest, the understory, that low green layer under the big trees.
The layer people clear first.
The layer people clear first, every single time. If you're putting in a road or a field or a house, the underbrush goes first. And it doesn't look like much. It looks like clearing out the messy bit under the good trees.
But that's her whole world.
That's her whole world. And here's what I keep coming back to. Most animals have some give in them. A generalist bat loses a roost and finds a cave or a hollow or a different fruit. She can't. She has one house material and essentially one food.
So when the understory goes, she doesn't lose one thing.
She loses both in the same afternoon.
What does that actually look like for her?
Here's the moment I can't stop thinking about. And it's a real moment. This happens. She's out all night. She works a fig tree. She flies home in the last of the dark, along the exact route she's used for months, down to the one plant she's been cutting for weeks.
It's gone.
And it isn't there. And it's getting light. And she is white.
Oh, that's awful.
And she isn't confused about how to fix it. That's the part that gets me. She knows exactly how to build a house. She knows which veins to cut, which side to start on, how many mornings it takes. All of that skill is still right there in her teeth.
There's just nothing to build with.
There's nothing to build with. She's not a homeless animal. She's a builder, standing in an empty space.
And that's not a predator or a storm or anything dramatic.
It's just a gap where a plant used to be. Which is why I think this one matters. Because the thing that hurts her is small, and it's quiet, and it's the sort of thing anybody could do without noticing.
And it's the sort of thing anybody could also not do.
Yes, and that's the whole hopeful half of this. Because the fix here isn't complicated or expensive. It is, leave the low green stuff standing. Leave the big broad leaves under the trees. That's it. That is the entire ask.
Which is a really unusual conservation story, isn't it? Normally the answer is enormous.
Normally, it's enormous. Here, if the understory is there, she has a house and she has dinner. If it isn't, she has neither. The whole thing sits on one very simple thing, staying where it is.
And has anyone actually done that at scale?
This is my favorite fact of the week. Costa Rica, which is right in the middle of her range, by 1987, Costa Rica had cut so much forest that only 21% of the country still had trees on it, roughly 1/5. That was the low point.
1/5, that's grim.
It was. Then, the country changed how it did things. Forest protection and paying landowners to keep forests standing rather than clear it, and it worked. By 2023, forest covered 60.4% of Costa Rica.
21 to 60.
From about 1/5 of the country to more than half within one human lifetime. The forest came back.
So a child listening to this could actually see that happen.
A child listening to this could absolutely see that happen. And as that forest grows back through its middle stages, the heliconia comes back with it, because heliconia loves exactly that shaded, humid, half-grown understory. New leaves, new building material, new houses waiting to be cut.
That's a lovely thought. The building supply is growing back.
The building supply is growing back, that's it precisely. And she is still out there right now, hanging under a green leaf she made herself, waiting for tonight.
Right, quiz time. 3 questions for the Fenekins listening.
Shout them out at the speaker, we can hear you.
Question 1. When she's cutting up a leaf to make her tent, there's one part she must never bite. What is it?
The middle spine, the mid-rib. Cut that, and the whole leaf drops. She only ever bites the little side ribs.
Question 2. She's Snow White. So how on earth does a snow white animal hide in a green forest?
The middle spine, the mid-rib. Cut that, and the whole leaf drops. She only ever bites the little side ribs.
And question 3, and this one is my favorite. She weighs the same as one piece of fruit you'd find in a lunchbox. Which one?
A grape. 5 to 6 grams of bat. 1 grape.
1 grape, and she builds houses.
1 grape and she builds houses.
That's the Honduran white bat, a real creature in a real place doing real things that sound like magic.
If you want to go deeper, the storybook, the pictures, all of it, find us at Fenekie.com. That's spelled Fenekie.
Until next week, Fenekins, keep wondering.